There's a photo the FBI still keeps in their active case files. It shows a backpack, green, with cartoon characters on it. Found buried, wrapped in plastic, hidden like evidence, but here's what makes investigators pause every time they look at it. That backpack was buried a year and a half after the girl who owned it vanished. Which means someone kept it, someone waited, someone came back. On February 14, 2000, 9-year-old Asha Degree walked out of her home at 3:30 in the morning. No force, no broken locks, no signs of struggle. She packed a bag, walked into a storm, and disappeared into the kind of darkness that doesn't give people back. 2 drivers saw her on Highway 18, alone, moving with purpose. When they turned around to help, she ran into the woods. By sunrise, Asha was gone. But that backpack? That didn't vanish until someone made sure it did, and the most unsettling part of this case isn't that she disappeared, it's why she left in the first place. Asha Degree was 9 years old, living in the small, close-knit town of Shelby, North Carolina, a place where neighbors recognized each other's cars and children grew up surrounded by familiar faces. She lived at home with her parents, Harold and Aquila Degree, and her older brother, O'Brien, in a household built on structure, routine, and care. This was not a chaotic home, and it was not an unsafe one. Those who knew the Degree family describe it as loving, protective, and deeply involved in their children's lives. Asha was not raised with freedom to wander, she was raised with rules, expectations, and consistency. From an early age, Asha was known for being quiet and cautious. She wasn't the kind of child who tested boundaries or sought attention. Teachers described her as polite and focused, someone who listened carefully and tried to do things the right way. At school, she took pride in her work. She was a dedicated student, organized, and eager to please the adults around her. She didn't skip assignments. She didn't cause trouble. If there was a rule, Asha followed it. At home, her routines mattered. Nights ended early, school mornings were predictable, Sundays meant church, where faith played a steady role in the family's life. Asha attended services regularly, surrounded by people who had watched her grow up year by year. Faith wasn't just a weekly event, it was part of the structure that shaped how she saw the world, right and wrong, obedience and trust. Despite being shy, Asha had interests that brought her joy. She played basketball, even though she was naturally reserved. On the court, she pushed herself quietly, determined but never reckless. She practiced, listened to her coaches, and stayed close to her teammates. Even there, among friends, she wasn't impulsive or bold, she was careful and thoughtful. And one detail stands out to nearly everyone who speaks about her: Asha was afraid of the dark. This wasn't unusual for a child her age, but it was well known. Darkness unsettled her. Loud storms made her uneasy. When weather turned bad, she preferred to stay close to her family, inside where she felt safe. She wasn't the kind of child who liked walking alone at night, she wasn't the kind of child who wandered far from home. Those closest to Asha describe her as careful, the kind of child who followed rules without being asked. She wasn't rebellious. She wasn't adventurous, she didn't sneak out, she didn't lie to gain freedom, nothing in her past suggested a desire to run away, to escape, or to disappear. There were no warning signs, no pattern of risky behavior, no history of defiance. Which is why everything about what came next feels so deeply wrong. Because when people try to understand this case, they aren't just asking where Asha went. They're asking how a child whose world was built on routine, safety, and trust could step outside of it at all. And the more you learn about who Asha was, her home, her habits, her fears, the harder that question becomes to answer. In the year 2000, Shelby, North Carolina was the kind of town where time moved slowly and familiarity was a form of security. Tucked into Cleveland County, Shelby was small, modest, and deeply rooted in routine. According to U.S. Census data from the late 1990s, the population hovered just over 20,000 people. Most families had lived there for generations. Streets felt familiar because they were. Faces felt familiar because they were. This was a place where neighbors noticed if your porch light stayed on too late, and where teachers recognized students by last name long before first. Violent crime was rare. FBI uniform crime reports from that period show Shelby and surrounding areas recorded relatively low rates of serious violent offenses, especially those involving children. Abductions were not part of the town's vocabulary. Parents worried about scraped knees and missed curfews, not disappearances. Children walked to school, bikes were left unattended in front yards, doors were often unlocked. Not because people were careless, but because nothing had ever given them reason to be afraid. Churches were everywhere. On Sundays, parking lots filled early, and services stretched well past their scheduled end times. Faith wasn't just personal in Shelby, it was communal. Church calendars shaped social life. Youth groups, basketball leagues, and choir practices gave structure to the week. Families didn't just worship together, they watched over one another. If a child skipped Sunday service, someone noticed. If a family struggled, meals appeared on doorsteps without being asked for. In neighborhoods like the one where the Degree family lived, everyone knew who belonged and who didn't. A strange car driving too slowly would draw attention. A knock on the wrong door would be remembered. It was the kind of town where people believed, genuinely, that nothing truly bad could happen without someone seeing it, hearing it, or stopping it. That's why what happened next felt so unnatural. When February 14, 2000 arrived, it didn't announce itself with panic or chaos. It came quietly, like any other Monday morning. Parents prepared for work, children got ready for school, but as the hours passed, a sense of unease began to ripple through Shelby, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. By midday, whispers moved faster than facts. By evening, the town understood something was wrong. This wasn't a place where children vanished without a trace. Which made February 14, 2000 feel less like a crime, and more like a rupture. Something had torn through the town's sense of safety, not loudly, not violently, but completely, and once that line was crossed, Shelby would never see itself the same way again. On the evening of February 13, 2000, nothing inside the Degree household suggested that this night would end differently from any other. The family lived along Oakcrest Drive, in a quiet residential area of Shelby, North Carolina. It was a school night. Valentine's Day was only hours away, and like many children her age, 9-year-old Asha Degree had plans for the morning. According to statements later given by her parents to investigators and reported by local and national news outlets, Asha had talked about a class Valentine's Day party. She had candies ready. There was excitement in the house, the kind that comes with anticipation over small things that feel big when you're a child. Earlier that evening, the neighborhood experienced a power outage. Public records and police interviews confirmed that electricity went out for a short period of time due to storm-related issues. The lights dimmed, then disappeared completely. The house fell into darkness except for flashlights and the glow from passing cars outside. It wasn't frightening, just inconvenient. Asha's parents later said the outage didn't seem unusual or alarming. Power outages happen from time to time, especially during bad weather. Eventually, the electricity returned, and life moved on as normal. Inside the home, the night followed its familiar rhythm. Dinner had already been eaten. Homework was done. Television shows ended. Parents prepared for the next workday. According to official timelines released by the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, Asha and her older brother, O'Brien, shared a bedroom. This was not unusual. Many families in Shelby lived modestly, and shared rooms were common. The siblings had grown used to one another's nighttime routines, the sounds of breathing, the shifting in bed, the quiet conversations before sleep. Bedtime came. Asha changed into her night clothes and got into bed. Her parents later told police that she appeared calm, normal, and content. There were no arguments, no punishments, no distress, nothing that stood out as a warning sign. This detail has been emphasized repeatedly by investigators because it matters. In missing child cases, the last emotional state of the child often provides clues. In Asha's case, there was nothing to suggest fear, anger, or upset. At some point during the night, Asha's father checked on the children. According to his statement, reported in multiple media sources including the Charlotte Observer and the Shelby Star, he saw both kids asleep in their beds. The house was quiet, the doors were closed. Everything was exactly as it should have been. This moment would later become one of the most haunting details in the entire case, because it placed Asha safely inside her home just hours before she vanished. The rain continued outside. Weather records from the National Weather Service confirm that the area experienced steady rain during the overnight hours. The sound of it against the roof and windows blended into the background, the kind of noise that usually helps people sleep rather than keeps them awake. Inside the Degree home, there was no sign that anything was being prepared, no noise reported by family members, no indication that a 9-year-old child was awake and planning something on her own. But sometime after the house settled into silence, something changed. What no one realized at the time was that Asha had already packed something, quietly, deliberately, before anyone noticed she was gone. This detail would only come to light later, after the panic began, after police were called, after her room was searched with new eyes. At the time, it meant nothing, because no one was looking for meaning. The house slept on, unaware that the final confirmed sighting of Asha Degree had already passed, and that the next time her absence was noticed, the night would be over, and the mystery would already be unfolding. The morning of February 14, 2000 began like any other school day inside the Degree home. The alarm went off. The routine started. Asha's mother, Aquila Degree, moved through the house expecting the familiar sounds of children getting ready, footsteps, quiet chatter, the shuffle of school clothes. When she checked the shared bedroom, Asha's bed was empty. At first, it didn't register as panic. Children get up early, they move to the bathroom, they wander into the living room, but within seconds, something felt wrong. Asha wasn't in the bathroom, she wasn't in the kitchen, she wasn't anywhere inside the house. According to public statements given by the family and confirmed by the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, the realization came quickly and all at once. This wasn't confusion that lingered, it was clarity, sharp and immediate. Asha Degree was not where she was supposed to be. Her brother was still asleep in the room they shared, unaware that his sister was missing. The house, which hours earlier had been calm and ordinary, suddenly felt too quiet. As her parents searched the rooms again, details began to stand out. The front door was unlocked, this mattered. The Degrees were careful, locking the door at night was routine. Investigators would later confirm that there were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no damaged windows, nothing to suggest someone had come in. Instead, everything pointed to something far more unsettling, that Asha had left the house on her own. Panic followed fast, but so did action. This wasn't a delayed response, this wasn't hesitation or denial. According to law enforcement records and media coverage from the Shelby Star and the Charlotte Observer, the family contacted authorities almost immediately. Within minutes, deputies were notified. Within a short time, officers were on their way. The urgency was unmistakable. By early morning, neighbors were alerted, family members began arriving, word spread quickly through the tight-knit community. Shelby was waking up to a reality it had never faced before. A child was missing, not after days, not after weeks, but within hours. Law enforcement began canvassing the area around Oakcrest Drive, roads were checked. Nearby yards were searched. People who lived close by stepped outside, scanning ditches and tree lines, calling Asha's name. The response escalated rapidly. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office coordinated with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. Search teams were organized. According to official statements, dogs were brought in, volunteers gathered, churches opened their doors, flyers would soon follow, but in those first hours, the focus was simple and desperate: find her now, while time still mattered. The rain from the night before had washed over the area, complicating the search. Weather records confirm that conditions were wet and cold, making it harder to track movement. Still, the search pushed forward. Officers and volunteers moved quickly, knowing that every passing minute mattered. The idea that Asha could still be nearby, still be found, drove the urgency. What stands out most, even decades later, is how fast everything happened. There was no waiting period, no assumption that she would return on her own, no dismissal of concern. From the moment Asha was discovered missing, her family and community moved with purpose. They did everything right, they acted immediately, they called for help, they searched and they mobilized. And yet, despite all of it, the speed, the manpower, the concern, Asha Degree was already gone. This wasn't a delayed response. This was a family and a community moving fast, and still not fast enough. By the time the sun fully rose over Shelby, the search for Asha Degree had already shifted from fear to focus. This was no longer just a missing child report. It was an active investigation. Deputies from the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office began collecting timelines, walking routes, and statements, trying to reconstruct the hours no one had seen. What mattered most now was direction, where Asha might have gone, and whether anyone else had crossed her path. That direction began to form through roadside witness statements. Later that day, law enforcement received reports from motorists who had been driving along Highway 18 in the early morning hours. According to publicly released investigator summaries and media reports, at least 2 separate drivers described seeing a child matching Asha's description walking south along the highway sometime between 3:30 and 4:15 a.m. This immediately changed the scope of the case. The sightings placed Asha miles away from her home, alone, in darkness, during a storm. The weather conditions made those reports even more troubling. National Weather Service records confirm that the temperature that morning was cold, with steady rain and poor visibility. This wasn't a mild night walk. It was the kind of weather that keeps people indoors, especially children. Investigators knew this mattered. A 9-year-old walking along a rural highway in rain and cold was not normal behavior, and it raised urgent questions about intent, fear, and influence. As deputies expanded their search along the reported route, they began checking areas where a child might seek shelter. Just off the highway, about a mile from where the sightings were reported, searchers discovered a small roadside shed used for storing equipment. Inside, they found several items that immediately drew attention: a hair bow similar to one Asha was known to wear, a pencil, and a candy wrapper. These details were later confirmed in official statements by law enforcement and widely reported by outlets including the Charlotte Observer. None of the items were dramatic on their own. They were ordinary, childlike. That was exactly why they mattered. Investigators believed the items may have been dropped or left behind by Asha while she was inside the shed, possibly seeking temporary shelter from the rain. The location supported the witness accounts. It suggested movement on foot, it suggested vulnerability, and it suggested that at least for a brief moment, Asha had been alone and exposed, not immediately taken. But it also deepened the mystery. There were no signs of a struggle near the shed, no evidence of violence, no clear trail beyond that point. Search dogs reportedly tracked Asha's scent to the area near the shed, then lost it. This detail, confirmed through law enforcement briefings, would haunt the investigation for years. A scent that stops does not explain why it stopped. Each piece of information raised new possibilities while closing none. If Asha left her home on her own, why head toward a highway in a storm? If she was meeting someone, how was that arranged without anyone knowing? And if someone encountered her after she left the shed, why were there no witnesses beyond that point? Investigators carefully avoided assumptions. Public records show they treated the case as both a possible runaway scenario and a potential abduction, keeping multiple theories open. Roadblocks were not immediately set because the evidence pointed to movement on foot rather than a vehicle at that stage. Flyers were distributed. Tip lines were opened. The search radius expanded outward from the shed, then outward again. At this point, investigators faced a terrifying question: did Asha leave on her own, or did someone meet her out there? The answer mattered, because it would determine where to look next, who to question, and whether the danger had already passed or was still waiting. For more than a year after Asha Degree vanished, the investigation moved forward without the one thing every missing person case needs most: certainty. Tips came in, leads were followed, searches were conducted, but nothing answered the central question of where Asha had gone after the highway. Then, in August of 2001, a discovery quietly shifted the entire case. Construction workers were digging near Morganton, North Carolina, roughly 25 miles north of Shelby, when they unearthed something unexpected. Buried in the ground was a backpack. Law enforcement was called immediately. According to public statements from the Burke County Sheriff's Office and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the backpack was carefully recovered and examined. It was identified as belonging to Asha Degree. The location alone was staggering. This was not near her home, not near the highway where she was last seen, it was miles away, in a completely different county. The distance mattered, because it ruled out simple wandering and pointed toward movement far beyond what a 9-year-old could realistically accomplish on her own. The way the backpack was found raised even more questions. It wasn't discarded on the roadside, it wasn't left in plain sight, it had been buried, wrapped in black plastic trash bags, preserved from the elements in a way that suggested intention. Investigators would later say publicly that this detail was critical. People do not accidentally bury backpacks. Someone made a choice to hide it. Inside were items that deepened the mystery rather than clarifying it. Among the contents were personal belongings tied to Asha, along with objects that did not clearly explain how or why the backpack ended up there. Some items appeared ordinary, others felt out of place. Law enforcement has never released a full inventory, but officials have confirmed that the contents did not point to an accident or a simple runaway scenario. Instead, they raised new questions about timing, contact, and control. Most importantly, the backpack confirmed something investigators could now say with confidence: Asha did not simply disappear into the night and vanish on her own. The distance, the concealment, and the condition of the backpack strongly suggested outside involvement. Someone had possession of it, someone transported it, someone decided where it would end up. This discovery shifted the case from uncertainty to implication, even if it still fell short of answers. For the Degree family and the Shelby community, the backpack was both devastating and clarifying. It proved Asha had not been forgotten, it proved evidence still existed, and it proved the case was far from over. Investigators renewed public appeals, tips surged again, the search for truth entered a new phase, one defined not by absence, but by the presence of proof that someone, somewhere, knew more than they were saying. This discovery didn't solve the case, it proved just how much of it was still hidden. More than 2 decades later, the disappearance of Asha Degree remains officially unsolved. There have been no arrests, charges filed, no public confirmation of a suspect. According to the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the case has never been closed, never downgraded, and never abandoned. It remains an active investigation. Over the years, local authorities have worked alongside the FBI, which joined the case to provide additional resources, behavioral analysis, and long-term investigative support. The FBI's involvement signaled something important. This was not being treated as a runaway case that simply went cold. It was, and still is, considered a serious missing child investigation with suspected criminal involvement. Law enforcement agencies have continued to receive and evaluate public tips. Some leads appeared promising. Others led nowhere. Investigators have stated publicly that certain details have been intentionally withheld from release, a common practice in long-term cases where preserving the integrity of potential future prosecutions matters. What the public knows is only a portion of what investigators hold. At different points, authorities have renewed appeals for information, releasing age-progressed images and re-emphasizing specific items connected to the case. Each time, the message has been consistent: someone knows something. Someone saw something. And one piece of information, no matter how small it may seem, could still change everything. For the Degree family, the lack of resolution has meant living without answers, not knowing where Asha went, who she may have encountered, or why her journey ended the way it did. For the community of Shelby, the case remains a quiet wound, a reminder that even places built on familiarity and trust are not immune to the unexplainable. This is not a story with a conclusion. It is a case still waiting for one. And until the truth is known, Asha Degree's name remains on the list of the missing, not as a memory, but as an open question. When people ask why this case still matters, decades later, the answer isn't mystery alone. It's responsibility. Asha Degree didn't vanish because no one was watching. She didn't disappear because her family hesitated, or because her community ignored the signs. By every public account, the right things were done, and they were done quickly. And yet, the outcome never changed. That reality forces an uncomfortable lesson: children's behavior should never be assumed, even when everything appears normal. Small routines, quiet choices, and ordinary nights can still carry consequences no one sees coming. This case also reminds us why early details matter: a locked door, a witness on a highway, items found in a shed, a backpack buried miles away. None of these details solved the mystery on their own, but together they formed a truth investigators could not ignore. Asha's story didn't fade because evidence disappeared, it endured because each detail demanded to be remembered, revisited, and respected. And then there is the hardest lesson of all. Some cases remain unsolved, not because they were forgotten, but because the answers are still hidden. For Asha's family, for Shelby, and for everyone who has followed this story, the absence of resolution doesn't erase responsibility, it sharpens it. Remembering matters, talking about her matters. Because silence is the one thing that guarantees nothing ever changes. Asha Degree didn't vanish because no one cared. She vanished despite everything being done right. And that's what makes this story so difficult, and so important to remember. If this case stayed with you, share your thoughts below the comments section, and if you haven't done the needful, hit that subscribe button now. This not theories, not accusations, just what this story made you feel, and why you think it still matters. Because somewhere, someone knows more than they've ever said, and until that truth resurfaces, this story isn't over, it's waiting.